How's it going? Welcome back, my wise ones, to a fantastic video. I'm very excited today because I get to talk about a beloved classic story. Yes, that's right, a fable, if you will. Someone please shoot me. But yes, today we are discussing Fable, and this is a beloved childhood classic for me. Now, I am officially Unk status, I'm 28 years old, so I grew up playing Fable. That was actually the first ever Xbox game I ever played, and thinking back to it, it was actually my first RPG. Now, you could say that Fable was always a light RPG, and it wasn't full open world, so I wouldn't say it was my first open world game, but it was definitely my first RPG experience, and especially the first one dealing with morality choices, and some player consequences and stuff like that. And since then I've been absolutely hooked to that formula, so I owe a lot to Fable. Now, I hope you're doing great, my wise ones, and if you're new to the channel and you love RPG stuff, game analysis, and philosophical content, you're in the right place for video essays and early game reviews. Subscribe if you're new, it does mean a great deal to me, and it's just an honor to have you here. Today I'm going to be looking at Fable, or we could say Fable 4, and compare it to the original games. I want to do a kind of comparison and basically dissect what we've seen from this new Fable game, and I want to look at this through a little bit of a skeptic lens, not because I usually do that or I think it's good, but because I think it's very important in this modern day and age of gaming, especially from Xbox and Microsoft, and just newer games in general compared to classic games. Usually it's not how we imagine them to be, and things get watered down because, let's be honest, games in the past were much more mechanically sound. Now, of course, there are games that are released today that actually set expectations for what we could get, like Baldur's Gate, for example, or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, or something like that. But a lot of games today now focus more on spectacle, on graphical fidelity, and they're usually very unoptimized, filled with, microtransactions, lots of this kind of predatory practices in modern day gaming. So that's why I think it's good to take a look at Fable, a skeptical look at the new Fable game, and this new Fable 4. Now, I've dug through all of the information so you don't have to do that. I'm not IGN over here saying that this is the first preview, but I have looked at all of the information, not just the gameplay stuff, so you don't have to look anywhere else. But this is not truly Fable 4, this is much more of a reboot of the franchise, and that's something that concerns me a little bit. Now, when I think about the original Fable games, I think of, cutscenes like this, that are very much that Fable storytelling, kind of fantasy style that you would get when you were a kid, someone reading you a bedtime story or something like that, true OG fables. That's what Fable is based on, these kind of fantasy stories, in mythological times, about heroes and villains, good and evil, the dichotomy of good and evil. So there are a few things that I want to discuss in today's video about the new Fable game, and why I'm a bit worried, because some of the darker undertones have been left out as far as I can see. When you look at some of these cutscenes, a lot of them were quite brutal. I'm going to show you one now, just as demonstration.
As the villagers screamed and begged for mercy, and soon their bodies filled the streets. Then the raiders reached the last house, where the boy and his family lived. It was them they had slaughtered so many to find. The father fought to protect his kin, but he was no warrior, and fell mortally wounded. The bandits ripped the house apart, but could not find the boy.
Now, a lot of people think Fable 2 was the best Fable game. A lot of people weren't a fan of the third one because of the kind of time jump and it being set in a more industrial area, period of time, and stuff like that. But to me, the best Fable game was always Fable 1, the Lost Chapters, especially the Lost Chapters before the Anniversary Edition. That just kind of polished things up a little bit. But the Lost Chapters, I just love that art style. I love, all the extra gameplay elements that it adds. Now, what you're seeing here is almost 20-year-old footage, so it's not going to be looking amazing exactly, but you can see the differences between good and evil very clearly. And this wasn't just a gameplay mechanic where NPCs would, react to your presence, your, morality. If you walked into a new town, they would scream because you were, literally a demon walking into their farmland, or they would all gather around you, and praise you because you are this, kind of angel sent from the heavens above. And the original Fable games had the actual physical manifestation of your morality, which I really liked. And that is not going to be in the new Fable game. So this is the first point I really want to highlight, okay? Because this is what made this game so cool. It almost had like sim-like elements with its character design and the mechanics. When you think about like games like GTA San Andreas, stuff like that just doesn't usually exist anymore. I know Rockstar does it a little bit with Red Dead Redemption, like you can get fat, you can grow your hair long and stuff like that. But Fable, nothing comes close to that, especially when morality itself impacts your body, magic, all of this kind of stuff. So basically, the stronger you get, the more you will change. You will get, bigger arms, you will get more muscles. And if you eat a lot of food, you're going to get fat, and that's going to actually show that. If you practice a lot in magic, you'll start getting these runes and these symbols all over your body, oozing magicka and will, which is super cool. And, if you're going to focus on agility, you're going to get kind of more lean and kind of like stretched out. Not only this, but you actually see this with age as well. Your character actually ages throughout the game, and I really love that because it basically, means you need to slow down and not rush through everything, because every time you level up, you actually go up in age as well. And that's just such a cool feature, and most games just aren't going to take that creative risk anymore. And I'm just really sad that the new Fable game isn't going to have this in the game by the sounds of it. It's not going to have physical representation of good or evil. Now, the sad thing, it might not just be the good and bad aspect, it might be everything, food and training, age, everything. So I'm a bit worried about that. Now, from the gameplay that we have seen, it does seem to be quite promising when it comes to the kind of sim-like elements, buying up land, renting out different properties, and, putting a massive rent fee on everything if you want to extort people. I'm not sure about the crime system. They didn't really show that off, if there is a crime and punishment system like there was in the original games. And one thing that has really stood out to me that I am not looking forward to, and I'm going to get a little bit philosophical here, so I hope you don't mind, as that is also what I do on this channel.
Who else could have done it and come this far? Would they have kept going?
Now that is the morality they're talking about. They have mentioned several times in interviews and in the gameplay shown off that in the new Fable game, morality is subjective, okay? Now, I'm not going to judge you if you think morality is subjective. Everyone is entitled to their own philosophical beliefs. But through my study of Stoicism, Taoism, and Buddhism, many other different philosophies, and my own philosophy, Solism, which is what I'm creating on this channel, I think that's complete bullshit. And also it goes against the core themes of Fable, being innately within us, innately human. Now, I know this is going to be a bit complicated, so I'm not going to go into this too much, but basically, if you are interested, I would highly recommend you read up on deontology, which is a philosophy of the kind of universal human morality system. Now, I highly recommend that you look up deontology if you are interested in this. It basically talks about how actions themselves innately are good or bad. It's what you manifest into reality. Not just, the idea of, okay, if I do something bad, but in the greater long-term outlook, it might actually be a good, the ends justify the means, all that kind of stuff. Deontology talks about a universal morality system where the action itself is either considered good or bad. and that is where, you know, universal human morality comes into play. And it also kind of touches on Plato's ideas of the perfect forms, you know, that we're just kind of remembering these ideas of love, justice, good and evil, and we're kind of subjectively experiencing them through our consciousness, but they are kind of, you know, just ideas that metaphysically exist, if you will. I know that might all sound a bit heavy, but I think that is very true, because humans, for the most part, obviously different cultures, different societies, we all have our own differences on what good and bad is, and of course historical and evolutionary changes change morality over time, but innately we do know roughly what is good or bad. We know that we don't really want to do harm to others because we wouldn't want that harm done to ourselves. So, you know, treat others how you want to be treated. It's a very basic universal principle for most, you know, higher conscious beings. And now that they're saying that Fable is a subjective morality system, I think this is going to ruin some of the gameplay aspect. And I know Fable was never super deep with its themes and story, but that was a big part of it, at least to me. It is kind of a goofy game at times, it has a lot of humor in it, but it also, like I said, the older games had much more of a darker undertone, especially around morality, and I feel that the new game might miss this quite a bit.
Let him cook! Let him cook now! Let him cook! I said let him!
You're goddamn right.
Now, I might have lost some of you there, but if you are interested in the more deeper psychological stuff, philosophical stuff when it comes to media, gaming, and that kind of stuff in general, check out my Solism playlist and my philosophical videos. I also did make another Fable video looking back at the old games and talking about the ethics. But needless to say, I don't think this is just going to change the story aspects of this game, but it might actually hurt the gameplay overall, because what they're talking about is every time you enter a new area, a new city, and this is full open world now, you know, it's not like you're loading into mini zones anymore. Basically, it's going to reset how NPCs treat you, because you won't have a physical manifestation of your morality anymore. You won't be going around with a halo over your head or horns growing out of your head, so people won't automatically know about your past deeds, because they all are, you know, kind of in their isolated bubbles instead of the greater world spreading gossip about you. I feel like that's going to take away some of the consequences. And I understand why they did that for, you know, more simplistic quest design and, you know, just depending on how they react to you. But that's what made the older games so good, is having these massive consequences, you know, ripple across the whole game world, and how all of these NPCs would then treat you. It made you feel like a true hero, because, you know, you are basically going against the nature of this world, or you are acting in line with the universe, with the Fables, you know, world and lore, and, you know, following virtue and being rewarded for being a good hero, and then others will react to you based on that decision. So I feel like that's going to change the gameplay a lot, because that was a big part of the original game. There would basically be different quests. They would be the same quest, but different ways to tackle those quests. So you would take a good card to take on that quest, for example, protect the farm, or, you know, pillage the farm with the bandits instead of, you know, fighting the bandits. It would give you two different options, and then this would affect your morality, and then how NPCs would react to you, and the boasting system, where you would basically boast beforehand before you go on a mission and get extra, you know, gold and renown, you know, fame from this. And, you know, you could either get famous through fear, or you could get famous through, you know, doing good actions. And all of this stuff was so cool because it would ripple across the whole game world and then change different outcomes on how NPCs just react to you, you know, marriages, shopkeepers, everything. And I'm just worried that now it's going to be a little bit more isolated and stripped back, and it's going to be more of a kind of sim-like management system. I think it could be cool, because then every NPC might have their own unique opinions about you, you know, because you'll get someone judging you for just wearing fancy clothing. And that is kind of true to life, you know, people do judge you based on kind of surface level stuff, but I just think it misses the deeper thematics of Fable. But it could be really cool if they don't let it, you know, limit gameplay, but I just have a feeling that it won't be as complicated. Now, maybe I'm the only one who really cares about this kind of stuff, and I'm just a huge nerd. That's why I wanted to make this video, because I'm sure not many of you will care, but that's why I think it's important to take a skeptical look at the new Fable game. And I do think that this game could be amazing, but there are things I'm worried about. That was the #1 issue. So the second thing that I'm worried about, like I said, is the darker undertone of the Fable games. That might have been lost. From the gameplay that I've seen, it looks very PG-13, and so many games today, especially released by Microsoft, are very PG-13, even if it is supposed to be for an adult audience. People who played the old Fable games now are adults, so it would make sense to make it a little bit more mature. It still needs that fantasy element, that, you know, over-the-top fantasy element, if you will, that kind of, you know, storybook nature. That's what made Fable so unique, but it also could balance that with darker aspects, and that's what made the original game so cool, because you could be farting on someone, or belching, or doing like weird stuff like having several wives at a time, and then, you know, then finding out about each other and seeing that all unfold. So many cool interactions in the Fable games, but then also there would be darker stuff where you could literally bring your most loyal fans and sacrifice them to the Dark Lord to just grow your evil powers. And some of the areas in the original Fable game, some of the original choices as well, like killing your best friend just to, you know, gain material wealth and stuff like this, or, you know, hide corruption in the kingdom and stuff like that. I just hope they don't miss all of those points as well. So I'm just hoping it's not going to be completely, you know, kind of childy PG-13, because from what I've seen, the gameplay, you know, are we going to be able to have sex, for example? Because that was a big thing in the original Fable games. You could go to brothel houses and literally be a pimp if you wanted to. You could have several wives, like I said. You know, you could do all of this kind of crazy stuff. I think there was even a system where you would actually contract STDs or something like that. It was pretty insane stuff, you know, for the time. And I just hope they go all in with that kind of element, but I'm just worried that it's not going to be that way. And from what I've seen, there isn't any blood or gore in the game, where before there were decapitations and stuff like that. So we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, I'm not hating on this game. From what I've seen, it looks promising, but this is a video just, you know, giving you the points of, you know, why it might not be good as the original Fable game, comparing the new Fable game to the OG original Fable game, and just taking a skeptical look. It doesn't mean that I'm not excited for it. In fact, I'm very excited. As you could tell, these games were my childhood, next to, you know, like Fallout and something, next to Fallout and stuff like that. So they mean a great deal to me. I've got very fond memories of playing these games with my family, actually. So I just hope that they don't destroy it. Now, the next thing that has me slightly worried is they said that this game is coming out at the end of this year, or some point in this year, quite soon actually. And from the gameplay I've seen, it doesn't look ready whatsoever, okay? Now, I don't know what they're using. I hope it's not Unreal Engine, for the love of God, please. But it looks very kind of stiff and janky, some of the animations, especially some of the combat animations. They barely look like they're out of kind of, you know, alpha stage in some areas. I've got to be honest, like, I can see where the vision is, but it doesn't look like it's quite there. It looks very stiff and janky, and like the combat just doesn't connect well. Also, the FPS looks pretty terrible right now, and I hope, you know, just they have enough time to iron that out, make it more fluid. I don't want them rushing this game and it being plagued with bugs and all that kind of stuff. So we'll just have to wait and see. And then finally, it's basically the art style. Now, I think, you know, graphical fidelity is very important, especially in modern gaming. That's what everyone wants, even though it's not necessarily needed, because art style over graphical fidelity is always better for optimization, better for releasing games on time instead of them taking years and years and years to be made. But also with Fable especially, it always had this cartoonish, you know, I don't know, not cartoonish, but this whimsical kind of storybook nature to it with the characters. You know, their bodies wouldn't be realistic humans. They would be kind of, you know, bulky, and just kind of shaped more like, you know, characters out of a storybook. I don't know how to describe it, but the original games had a very unique art style to them, where it wasn't trying to be hyper-realistic, it wasn't trying to be photorealistic or have these, you know, humans actually look like proper people. And what I've seen so far is it's kind of looking more like generic fantasy instead of Fable fantasy, and that does scare me a little bit. And from what I've seen, they're emulating a lot of Hogwarts Legacy, that kind of simplistic, you know, kind of combat approach where you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different abilities that you can choose from. They're on a cooldown, and you can, you know, swap them out at any time. And Fable was never known for great gameplay, great combat, but I just would have liked to see something, you know, a little bit more skill-based. Now, I hope for this Fable reboot, or Fable 4, that they do bring back, you know, demon doors, these little kind of riddles and puzzles that you had to solve. That was very unique for Fable, you know, having to solve these different kind of riddles or challenges, mini challenges to unlock certain treasure, and they had unique weapons and armor and loot, similar to the older Bethesda games. I hope that's still there. It's not just, you know, stat increases and all of that kind of modern day RPG, you know, fluff. I hope it's actual, you know, unique weapons and armor, because that is a lot more fun. Yeah. And also, Fable was always a very personal story about family, redemption, good and bad, and I hope they stick to those themes. I hope they don't try and make it as morally grey as something like Baldur's Gate 3, because I love those games, you know, like Fallout. I'm absolutely in love with Fallout New Vegas and deep games that ask moral questions, like I said, like Baldur's Gate. But not every game needs to be that. I like the fact that Fable was always black and white, good versus evil. Like I said, it fits with the themes of deontology and the Fable's universal system of morality. But now that they're changing that to a subjective morality, I wonder how that's actually going to play out. I hope they add cool bosses, you know, and I just hope it doesn't become like a bloated RPG open world game where, like Hogwarts Legacy, there's tons of things to explore, but it's usually copy and paste. I want it to be handcrafted and not just, you know, points on a map to check off. It needs to be done either well, like Skyrim or something, where it always feels like you're, you know, doing something useful, like you're always progressing your character, there's always good loot to find, there's always interesting quests to discover in these locations. If it's just, you know, points on a map like a Ubisoft game for you to go and clear, and it's just a bunch of bandits, no quest lines to it, no morality choices to it, I don't think this is going to be like the Fable games that I love and that I remember. So that is my skeptical look at the new Fable game, and just looking at why I loved the previous Fable games, and, you know, what I'm hoping they will add, and what it looks to be right now. Like I said, they've got the NPC system down, with, you know, owning houses, buying houses, being a landlord. The sim element stuff looks very good. I'm excited that it's full open world. I like the fact that they've talked about having these, you know, repercussions on the world, these consequences, like if you kill a giant, their body will actually, you know, impact prices in that area, and it will slowly kind of decay over time, and NPCs will react to what you do on these quests. But I haven't heard about, you know, the boasting system. I haven't heard about the physical body changes, you know, depending on the skills and magic that you use, or an age system, anything like that. So I'm just a little bit worried, because this is coming from a studio that's never done an RPG before. So there you go, that is what I think so far of the new Fable game. Sorry, I just wanted to gush about it because I just love this and I wanted to talk about it. I do hope you enjoy this kind of content where I just can talk about stuff I care about, not just do reviews. Let me know what you think, give the video a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Peace out.